The forest that eats the forest had always been a mystery to the townsfolk. A sprawling wilderness of twisted trees, thick underbrush, and an unnatural silence that weighed heavily upon anyone who dared to enter. For generations, it was said to be cursed, a place that swallowed men whole, never returning them to the world they once knew. Farmers spoke of hearing screams carried by the wind on moonless nights, and hunters swore they had seen shapes moving between the trees that were neither animal nor human. Yet, no one dared to linger long enough to uncover the truth. A century ago, the forest was said to have been lush and alive, full of birdsong and fertile grounds. Families would gather wood there, children would chase each other among the wildflowers, and hunters would return with game. But that changed after a great famine struck. Desperate for food, a group of villagers, led by the town's elders, had performed a ritual deep inside the forest, sacrificing an innocent child to appease some ancient spirit they believed could save them. The famine lifted shortly after, but from that night on, the forest was never the same. Its trees grew darker, their branches curling like claws. The animals disappeared, and the air became heavy with a sense of dread. The villagers whispered that the spirit had taken root within the woods, feeding on those who trespassed. Over the years, disappearances mounted. Young men, emboldened by drink or pride, entered the forest to prove themselves brave, only to vanish without a trace. Children who wandered too close would run home trembling, claiming the trees whispered their names. The town built a wall of stone and iron along the edge of the woods, warning all who passed to stay away. But curiosity has always been stronger than fear. One autumn evening, a group of university students, drawn by local legends and stories of the supernatural, arrived in the town. They had cameras, flashlights, and a hunger for adventure, believing the tales to be nothing more than folklore, exaggerated by generations of isolation. Among them was Amelia, a skeptic who wanted to write her thesis on the psychological effects of rural ghost stories. Her friends, Jacob, Hannah, and Daniel, saw the trip as a chance to capture something paranormal on film. The townsfolk warned them not to enter, but warnings only sharpened their resolve. The group set up camp just beyond the iron wall. That night, as the moon hung low, Amelia recorded her first notes, scoffing at the trembling voices of the villagers who spoke of the forest that eats. Yet, as the hours stretched, silence fell heavier than before. No insects chirped, no leaves rustled, and the forest loomed like a black mouth yawning open. Hannah was the first to notice something odd. Their compass needles spun wildly, refusing to point north. Jacob laughed nervously, chalking it up to magnetic interference. But unease crept into their laughter. They entered the forest the next morning. At first, it seemed disappointingly normal, aside from its stillness. But as they ventured deeper, the trees grew taller and thicker, their bark scarred as though clawed from the inside. Strange symbols, etched deep into the wood, appeared along their path. Amelia insisted they were likely remnants of old superstitions, but Daniel felt watched, as though dozens of unseen eyes followed their every move. By midday, the group stumbled upon a clearing, where a massive oak stood, blackened and gnarled. At its base was a circle of stones, half buried beneath moss and soil, forming what looked like an ancient altar. Rust-colored stains streaked the stones. Jacob joked nervously that they had found the site of the old sacrifice, but his laugh died when the wind carried a faint cry like that of a child through the trees. From that moment on, the forest began to change. The path behind them seemed to vanish, swallowed by the undergrowth. The air thickened, making it harder to breathe. Their flashlights flickered, though it was still daylight. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting into shapes that writhed across the forest floor. Hannah swore she saw a figure standing between the trees, a pale child, with hollow eyes, but when she blinked, it was gone. Panic set in as the hours passed. They tried retracing their steps, but every direction led them back to the black oak. The forest seemed alive, shifting and rearranging itself like a maze. Amelia still clung to logic, trying to calm her friends, but her voice shook as she admitted she felt an overwhelming hunger gnawing at her stomach, though she had eaten only an hour ago. The others confessed they felt it too, a gnawing emptiness, as though something inside them was being hollowed out. That night, as they huddled together, the whispers began. They came from the trees, soft and beckoning, calling each of them by name. Amelia covered her ears, but the voices pressed deeper into her mind, promising safety if she stayed, if she gave herself to the forest. Jacob screamed suddenly, thrashing in the dark, claiming unseen hands were pulling him into the soil. By the time they found him, only his upper body remained above ground. his legs twisted and sinking into the earth, as though the forest was devouring him alive. His final scream was cut off as the dirt closed over his head. Hannah and Daniel wanted to run, but Amelia insisted they stay near the oak, believing it to be the heart of the curse. She poured through her notes, piecing together fragments of the villagers' legends. She realized the forest was not just haunted, was starving, bound to the sacrifice that had birthed it. It consumed life to sustain itself, drawing in anyone foolish enough to enter. By dawn, Hannah had vanished. Daniel claimed she wandered into the trees in a trance, her eyes glazed over, her steps soundless. He chased her, but returned broken, his clothes shredded, his arms covered in scratches that burned like fire. Amelia knew Hannah was gone. The whispers now grew louder, more urgent, and the forest itself seemed to close in, its branches curling downward like fingers reaching for them, desperate. Amelia and Daniel attempted one last escape. They ran without direction, ignoring the pain, ignoring the whispers, until they stumbled back to the black oak once more. It stood waiting, roots twisting and pulsing like veins. In its bark, they now saw faces, hundreds of them, and screaming, their mouths opening and closing in silent agony. Among them, Jacob's face appeared, his eyes wild with terror. Hannah's too, her lips mouthing words Amelia could not hear. The forest demanded more. Daniel fell to his knees, his body convulsing as the ground split beneath him. Roots lashed upward, wrapping around his arms and dragging him down into the soil. Amelia screamed, clawing at the dirt to pull him free, but it was useless. His face twisted in despair before he vanished beneath the earth. Alone, Amelia realized there was no escape. She clutched her recorder and spoke her final words, warning whoever found her notes that the forest was alive, that it would never stop hungering. She described the ritual, the sacrifice, and the endless cycle of devouring. Her voice trembled as the whispers grew deafening, promising her relief if she surrendered. The recorder clicked off mid-sentence. Weeks later, the townsfolk found the abandoned camp beyond the iron wall. The students were never seen again. Yet at night, when the wind is just right, some swear they hear Amelia's voice echoing from the forest, begging not to be forgotten. The forest waits, silent and patient, ready for its next meal.